I think I didn't want to acknowledge how much it was affecting me. And I also I had a weird relationship with it because on the one hand, I just really didn't want to be looked at differently.
Right.
I didn't want to be seen as less than or less capable because of this thing that happened. There were times where I couldn't focus enough to do a project, and I would have to open up to a professor about I didn't get this done. I still felt and feel just as capable despite what has happened.
Dying of laughter.
It's not funny.
My mom has stage 4 cancer in her bones and in her breast. My dad's disease was 15 years, he died of ALS. I made a podcast about death, seemed like the thing to do. And if you're sad by all of this, well, you're gonna die too.
What up? Happy week, everyone. It is almost Christmas. It is the 18th. Oh my goodness. All 8 nights of Hanukkah happened. It was a Hanukkah jolly time, and now we have Christmas coming up. Everyone always says they can't believe it's the end of the year, but no. You know what? I'm not going to say that because everyone says that. And I'm unique. Okay. So excited to share this episode today with Mark Jacobson. He is a fellow USC alumni and a friend of mine who had a fantastic 2019. We actually recorded this the end of last year, and since his year was so great, I didn't release it right away because then pandemic times. I think it was scheduled for March, so there you go. But this is a really refreshing episode to remember the excitement of life, that good things can happen. He opens up about booking 6 episodic shows in 1 year, which is really, really incredible. I mean, I think that's a record besides celebrities and really fancy people. I think that's one of the highest records I've personally heard. And that is a testament to Mark's talent, perseverance, and amazing attitude and personality. Today, we open up about the loss of both of his parents, which is a specific loss in and of itself. We started this podcast off at the beginning of last year with Courtney Lloyd, a friend of mine who lost both of her parents. And I'm really grateful for Mark to share that experience, not wanting that to define you, and just persevering and being a successful actor and human being. We're also going to do a special follow-up episode in a couple weeks where we check back in with Mark, revisit these triumphs, and also hear about what he's learned and how he's navigated his career in 2020. So stay tuned for that. I thought it would be fun to do a 2-parter. The last thing I'll mention today is that I had the honor of interviewing Hope Edelman last week, who is the author of Motherless Daughters, a book that I've gifted many people over the course of my life, and it was truly one of my proudest moments having the opportunity to have spoken with her virtually and getting to share that interview with you guys soon. She has a free 4-week class for anyone grieving. It will start Sunday, January 3rd at 4 p.m. Pacific time for 1 hour. The topics are pertaining to grief and the after grief. She has a new book called The After Grief, which explores what grief is like over the course of your life as opposed to just a few years after. And the course will also explore very early loss, if you've lost a loved one before age 7 and want to talk about that, as well as crossing the silent threshold, which is passing the age that your parent was when they died. And again, completely free, Sundays at 4 p.m. for 1 hour starting January 3rd. I really hope that somebody listening signs up because when she told me about it, I was like, I would love to plug that. So check that out and please enjoy Mark. I'll talk to you guys soon. Take care of yourself. Merry Christmas. I know it's a hard one. Hopefully there's a little bit of joy that can find its way into each person's holiday this year. And if not, then not. Bless us all. We are entering a new year, and whatever that means to you, I will look forward to sharing Mark's episode. Have a great day. Bye-bye. Well, thank you so much for coming, Mr. Mark.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
You've been so busy shooting 400 projects. No big deal.
That's very sweet and mostly untrue.
No, you work on more things than a lot of people, I would say. I mean, besides celebs, but they're not people.
Yeah, right. They're not people at that point. Absolutely not. Yeah, no, it's been... I have shot 6 episodics this year, which is really exciting. I did not qualify for health insurance, but
Wow.
So that's an actor logistic, just truth bomb. But yeah, 6 different shows, which is really very cool.
I mean,
and a goal that is going to be hard to reach for next year. But
the biggest congrats
Thanks.
ever. I booked
0 episodics, but I did get health insurance. So
yeah, you
different
did. Hey,
statistics.
right? That commercial life?
Yes, one
See,
commercial. But
that's the move.
actually I booked 1 episodic. But you booked 6.
Okay, but let's not do a comparison or a minimizing. I think those are huge accomplishments.
Thank you. Well, this podcast is about you, so let's celebrate you. What are
Okay.
your 6 shows would you like to share?
Sure. Goodness. So I started the year on I booked 3 episodics in 3 weeks, which is a really crazy thing. I did Speechless. I was in the last episode,
Ever.
sadly, of Speechless on ABC. And that was after I had been pinned 4 times prior, and I'd been in for the show 12 times. So
Wow.
the offer came in, and it was we finally get to bookmark, which was a really lovely sentiment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that every time I got aside for that show, the writing was funny, and I think they were doing a lot of really wonderful things for television. So I was sad that it went, but I'm glad I got to be on it opposite Minnie Driver.
Didn't that happen to you with Nickelodeon too? You went in like 12 times?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, at the end of last year, I did Henry Danger, and I had auditioned for that show 21 times.
That is incredible.
Yeah, I had more audition footage than an episode. So, and there was never a chance that I didn't have to go in. It was every single time I would go in. And it got to the point, though, which I think is nice as an actor, that it reached a point where I wasn't worried about how I did in that individual audition. Because I was like, at this point, you have other examples.
Right.
It's not like your 3rd time into an office where you're like, I'm pretty sure this isn't a fluke at this point, but I still don't think you like me yet.
Mm-hmm. This is
So-
unbelievable. I mean, this is fascinating data. And it's a testament to your talent that they keep bringing you back because you're amazing.
Yeah, it was. I hold a lot of secrets against people, and that's really how it works. But yeah, no, that was Speechless was really wonderful and a lovely environment on set. And then I did The Kids Are All Right for ABC, and I got cut from it, but it was a great time shooting.
Mm-hmm.
And a BET drama that I also got cut from called Games Divas Play, because
Wow.
obviously people can't see what I look like, but I sound like I should be on something called Games Divas Play for sure.
Love it.
And then I booked my first gig in Atlanta. I have Southeast rep.
Yep.
So I booked a show for BET Plus called Bigger. It's a comedy from Will Packer. So I got to do a bunch of stuff in an episode of that. And hopefully they will probably get picked up, and hopefully I'll get to come back next season.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Fingers crossed.
a coworker of one of the regulars. So
Cool.
yeah. And that leads us to there. And then I did The Resident also in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just shot 911.
I mean, this is the best news ever. I
It's-
just want to celebrate and like start jumping up and down on a table.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so besides being a booking machine,
I mean,
you also got married this
I did.
year.
Yeah, in June.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We're still living that newlywed life and trying to fit all of our things together. I mean, we've been living together for a very long time, but now welcoming in like wedding gifts and getting rid of like things that had just been Mark's life prior to married life.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's so exciting. Would you say this was the best year ever?
it's been a pretty amazing year. It has been a lot of learning curve. I wouldn't say the wedding planning process is the easiest thing in the whole world.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I turned 30 this year. It was a
Happy
big year.
B-Day!
Thank you.
Wait, that's kind of serendipitous. Or I don't know. Does this mean something? Should we look into this?
Should we? Maybe. I don't know. I think it was a year in which I learned to kind of confront expectation that I had on myself, and for what a wedding would feel like, and for what working a lot would feel like, and turning 30 would feel like, and just trying to appreciate the moment as they happen and they come. And
Would you say that you did something different than the year before? Was there a new class or coach or mindset you entered into?
That's a great question. I did start at a new studio. I'm studying with a guy named Graham Shields, who is a Yale MFA, and it's the first class that I've been in where it sort of makes me appreciate that I majored in theater, because his focus has been largely in TV and film, but he went to Yale, and so he throws down references that, thank goodness I was awake in my theater history class.
Right.
And it's nice to hear those. That you're like, finally something. It's not just strictly audition technique, technical, and it is an on-camera geared class for sure. But he draws from a lot of the basic tenets of a theater education, which is nice.
Great.
So that helped, and I'm a pretty diligent hustler,
You
which I
are.
know you are as well. And I think that paid off this year pretty well.
Right. That's kind of a beautiful reminder of the work that you've been doing since you graduated does go towards something.
Yeah, it's a planting seeds, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of those like I would say there wasn't, aside from the Atlanta stuff, that was new, and I got the regional rep via hustling, but
Right.
those casting contacts I did not have.
Mm-hmm.
But everything I've done here was through someone I had met and already kind of knew, and someone who could vouch for my capability.
Fantastic. And there are offices you had kept in touch with over the years or been in for here and there.
Yeah, I'm a reader at a workshop venue, which definitely helps
Great.
in terms of who I get to meet and get to know, and it demystifies the process. I can walk into a room and be like, "You're a person that I spent a few hours with," as opposed to a gatekeeper for a job that could impact my life in a big way.
Is it one-on-one? We can cut this.
It's
if you don't
Ace
want to say.
Studios. No, I'm very
Ace.
proud.
Cool.
I could do an entire podcast episode about the merits of workshops and the validity of them.
Wow.
But yeah, no, I very proudly have been involved with Ace Studios for a long time, and attend classes as well, like quite a bit, even if I'm not the reader for them.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think it has taught me everything they are supposed to teach. I learn about each office and what they each need, and I keep diligent notes for myself so I know who I'm walking into. And yeah, I don't appreciate, I completely understand that people do not like the idea of a workshop system, but I don't know a better way.
Right.
So to me, if it's a matter of meeting someone versus not meeting someone and hoping that all of the stars align, I want to take as much control as I can of my career. And there are only so many free resources for actors to meet casting. And you cannot expect your agent to be, there representing a number of people because of how the business works. And the only people who get generals are at much higher level agencies
Right.
than I'm at. So if this is a way I can meet people who can, I can add value to their show in some way, then I'm going to do that.
I love it. And yeah, thank you for saying that, because so many people have so many things that they're doing that I don't think everyone is super transparent about because of their own demons and insecurities. And I really value the hustler in you. And I know our USC-ness can come out in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like some people think workshops are pay to play, but for me, complaining about pay to play is kind of like complaining about not being second generation Hollywood.
Right.
Those things are just what they are. And how long do you want to complain? And how long do you want to take action about something you can control?
Right.
You know?
And if I was related to someone, would my career be further along? Entirely possible. But if I'm not related to someone who can make those introductions for me, then it is up to me to make those introductions for myself.
100%. And you are taking home the bacon with the 6 shows in a row, baby.
I mean, yeah.
So I do feel like I feel like there totally can be a part 2 when you're like, I could do a whole podcast episode just about workshops. I'm like, that really could be a whole episode. Maybe there will be a part 2. But I wanted to talk also about your attitude and your demeanor in life. From what I know of you, is extremely uplifting and positive.
Thank you.
Even just from this short conversation, I feel like someone listening would agree. Did you grow up with a positive attitude? Has this always been your demeanor, or was it learned?
That's a wonderful question. What's fun? I describe myself as bad at fun. So I don't, while I might be a positive person, and I think I try to be that, but I don't know. I've always been very supported. I'm an only child. And while it is a great compliment to me when people think I have siblings, because I think there's a lot of stigma around what an only child means,
Mm-hmm.
I was never lacking in support.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, it was very clear from early on that I could pursue whatever sort of set my heart afire. And that's a really lovely atmosphere to grow up in. And yeah, I would say I'm definitely very pragmatic.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes I don't necessarily sound positive, but I think I choose to approach a day as what I can hope for. As opposed to I can name all of the things stacked up against me, and I can see all of the ways that I will, that I can and most likely will fail.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly it was like extremely demoralizing to not qualify for health insurance, knowing that I've had the biggest year of my career.
Also, can we
So,
just talk about the fact that 6 shows, yeah, that really should
yeah,
equal.
and I
It's
qualified
difficult.
last year on essentially like I was the beneficiary of a scheduling goof for
What does that mean?
I did How to Get Away with Murder last year,
Mm-hmm.
and it was the crossover episode with Scandal.
Mm-hmm.
So there were a lot of moving pieces, and my scenes were with Kerry Washington, which was great. And I was
Amazing.
booked for a week because I was in 3 different scenes. And then it was happening right around the Golden Globes, and they couldn't because they're like luminaries on those shows. They could not get them all in the same place at the same time for when they needed to. So I was booked for a 1-week contract that then got prorated an extra 4 days.
Wow.
So I was maybe like the highest paid co-star they've ever had on that show.
Whoa.
So and if it hadn't been for that gift, I would not have qualified last year either. I had done 3 other shows in addition to How to Get Away with last year, but it wasn't like it would have been a very similar situation to this, where it's a bunch of one-day co-stars.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, the industry.
So I do, but I try to keep. I'm in a place right now where I'm balancing. I can recognize the great accomplishments that I've had this year.
I mean, is
Um,
it crazy that I want to trade? My instinct is like, okay, well, I want to book 6 things, but it's all apples and oranges.
yeah. It's one of the. It is not as big of a loss as it feels, but I think I want to treat it as a job, and as much as I know I'm making headway, there was a
Mhm.
big symbolic thing to qualifying for health insurance that, like, once I learned that, I was like, oh, I'm not doing it the way that I had anticipated.
Well, most actors, even, I know you have successful friends, I have successful
Mhm.
friends, and most of the people I know have never qualified or
Sure.
have qualified once or twice,
Right.
with a few exceptions. And that might, it's very possible that's the same for you, even though people are working. So
Yeah.
just want to reiterate,
No,
you
thank
really
you.
are doing fantastic. I mean,
Thank
that's the
you.
most bookings I think I've ever heard in one year, again, with a few exceptions.
Right, unless you're on a thing that keeps bringing you back, or you're like the successful people that we know.
And there's a lot of stereotypes about your category being difficult.
Yes, which I will say, like I think it is high time for it to be difficult for my category. It is when you are a developmental actor in a category that is historically benefited. Like, it's still like, okay. Like, I will walk into a room and I wouldn't ever blame producers for like trying to make their show more
Of
inclusive if
course.
it means I'm not getting the job. Like, that's how it should be. And I think there's also something to be said for like, it's not, they could do better in populating their series regulars in an inclusive way,
Yes.
as opposed to trying to meet their quota on guest cast and things like that. But yeah, it is knowing especially how quote unquote hard it is for my category. I am very grateful for the work that I've gotten this year.
Yeah, and it goes to show, I mean, people get really caught up in hearsay and trends, and I think wanting to blame someone for something. And it's just nice to show statistically things might lean one way, but there's possibilities everywhere. I
Yeah.
mean, look at you. 30, you're a straight white male. You booked 6 shows.
Yeah.
And you worked the year before, and you had insurance. It's
Yeah.
before, and
yeah. I'm
you're
not hurt. Like
amazing.
anyone who is complaining about a lack of opportunity, I think that comes probably from a place of insecurity, and I think they just need to. It's not a good look. It's really just a bad.
Right.
There's no justification for airing those thoughts, or even when I've heard. Not fortunately, my rep has never uttered anything close to this, but when reps will complain or say that to their clients, I think the onus is on the actor to find the ways in to level the playing field for themselves against the people who have the connections, not even just like a cultural background, quote unquote, advantage.
Right.
But it's your job. Your agent is getting 10% of your check because they're doing 10% of your work at best.
Yes.
And that really needs to be anyone who is kind of above doing the business part. I don't have a whole lot of sympathy for.
Right.
Because it's the Olympics. I listened to not to shout out another podcast on your podcast. What a
There's
jerk.
no other podcast that exists. Is it Audrey Helps
Of course
Actors?
it's Audrey Helps Actors.
Okay, continue.
Because she always, she references the idea of like an Olympic mindset. And I think that's such an important thing to keep in mind, that we are in the hardest place and the most important place to work. And if you want to be competitive, you have to approach it every day. Every day I'm terrible at taking vacations. And this is sort of something that I've learned in my marriage is that my wife needs sort of an escape to clear her mind in order to dive back into the work that she does. And I have a really hard time taking vacation because I know that every day I don't wake up and do something for my career is a day that something isn't necessarily happening for my career. So, but that is generally speaking the mindset that I approach every day with, and then I'm trying to get better at vacation.
Maybe just like one teeny little vacation.
Yeah. We did our honeymoon. Like we did a proper.
Where'd you go?
We went to French Polynesia.
Amazing.
So we did Moorea and Bora Bora.
Even just hearing those words, I can just feel the breeze on my face.
Oh, it's disgustingly pretty. Yeah, the colors are not real, and you get used to how impossible it all is very quickly.
Right.
Yeah. I was thinking when we were there were a bunch of families with teenagers, and I was looking at them and I was like, I don't think you can go to a place like that. You should go to a place like this when you're younger. Because you have to see enough of the rest of the world to appreciate that kind of a landscape and that kind of beauty. If you grow up with the expectation, you're like, oh, yeah, it's fine. Like, yeah, we went to Bora Bora. It's like, I was 12. It's fine. It was like, whatever. I was on my phone. But yeah, it was wonderful. And I brought books and I relaxed and.
Go, Mark.
Yeah.
Proud of you.
Yeah.
Celebrating.
My wife is very patient with that part of me. And part of the arrangement for our honeymoon was that I go on trips too. Like she is very content to bring a book and sit by the ocean for an entire day from like the sunrise to the sun setting. And I go stir crazy.
Right.
It's just my personality does not allow for that. So the first part of our trip was a lot of exploring Moorea and driving around and going to different restaurants and tours and things like that. And then the Bora Bora part was like, okay, we're going to sit and we're going to read and we're going to drink and we're going to breathe.
Oh, I love
and
those
swim.
Things. Oh, I love those things.
Yeah.
I have so many things I want to talk to you about, this is the sign of a good interview when I have
Good.
like 400 questions.
Yeah, right. We haven't talked about like the actual purpose of your podcast yet.
The purpose is, it's ambiguous.
It
What
is.
is the purpose
Right.
of life? Okay. Anyone in this strange club, I have so much respect for. So let's talk about, where did you grow up? What was growing up like with your parents and how you got from there to here and what that experience has been like? Because people don't know you.
They don't.
Mhm.
And it's not, I always sort of describe when people learn about my loss, there's this weird impetus to feel bad. Like, feel bad that they didn't know. And I'm like, why? Like, it's not a thing that's, like, fun to talk about at parties. Like, it's not a thing that you're going to hear about. And, like, I don't expect anyone to know what to say in response.
Right.
I think that's the biggest, like, expectation people have about grief is, like, I need to be something in particular for you as opposed to just be for you. like be present. But I'm
Yep.
from Phoenix, Arizona. I'm an only child. I already covered those things. And yeah, my parents were they had both been married to other people before they met each other, and then that was the great love of their lives. And when I was the week before I turned 12, my dad had a stroke and passed away right before I turned 12. And they had been married for 17 years. And
Wow.
so it was just my mom and me. And my grandmother also at the time lived next door to us. She lived next
Aw.
door all growing up. And I lost my grandfather when I was like 4, but I wasn't like a loss that I kind of processed in that way. And they're
Right.
grandparents, so there's sort of more of an expectation of like, that's probably going to happen.
Right.
Um, but yeah, so, and my grandmother is my mom's mom. So my mom had all of the things of like, imagining your mother living next door and having the key to your house and all of those things, the expectation of like, why aren't you calling me? I haven't heard from you thrice today. What's happening?
Love it.
But it led me to be spoiled rotten, which I greatly appreciated. Yeah, I was never wanting for love or support. And I started doing theater very early on. I went to summer camp at the Arizona Jewish Theater Company.
Wait, that exists?
Oh, it
That's
does not
amazing.
anymore, I believe.
Dang.
But they were around for a long time growing up. There's a lot of old Jewish people in Phoenix because they like to move where it's hot and dry.
My boyfriend is a Jew from Scottsdale, but he's
See?
not an actor, so he did not go to that camp. But
No,
sounds
but
amazing.
but he's part of the community.
Yes.
Yeah. So the camp was there, and that kind of lit the fire. / I'm sure something was there prior for my mom and dad to think that was a good move for me.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I started doing a lot of youth theater, so I wasn't home a lot growing up. I was always having rehearsals after school, and um, yeah. So after my dad passed, that was kind of when it coincided a little bit with me figuring out that acting was something that I wanted to do properly.
Mm.
And I had a set of friends from elementary school, and I was already supposed to move to a different school in the summer that he passed. So I'd said my goodbyes. And then I
Wow.
started at a new middle school right like after he passed. And it was a whole, like, I didn't know anyone there. And it was a very odd experience I wanted to be understood, and I wanted something that was comfortable and familiar when so much wasn't. So I stayed at that middle school for a couple weeks, and weirdly, my last day of school was September 11th.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I ended up going back to the middle school that I was supposed to go to, um, and like surrounded myself again with my old friends because that was sort of what I needed.
Mm-hmm.
That was medicinal. And started to do a lot of theater in middle school, and that's when I started in youth theater at a place called Grease Paint that is in Scottsdale that I do think is still functional. And then I went to a performing arts high school, and we would have our academics in the morning, then we'd cross the street in the afternoon to Phoenix Theater, which is a regional theater house that is still there. They just celebrated their, I think, 100th anniversary. And we would get taught by their artists in residence. So I wasn't home a lot, which was probably really hard for my mom. I'm learning, I don't know if this is something you've experienced. I'm learning a lot more about the people that I lost as I move on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm starting to put myself in the mindset of like, oh, what was that like for her? Like, she's dealing with this grief too, and she's alone too, and I'm not home like ever.
Wow.
And
Right.
that's got to be a weird, hard thing. That whatever she was looking for, in addition to me being like a twerpy teenager and not emotionally available to her, yeah, I just wasn't there. And I think I was a good student. I was a really good student, and I always had something going on after school, which I think that was my way of giving to her. I think was like she
Right.
never had to worry about drugs. She never had to worry about me like going off and doing something terribly stupid. But yeah, and then. So went to USC for college. Sophomore year, about a month into school, my mom had a car accident and was in a coma for a year and a half. And then we moved her into hospice, and she passed right before my senior year of school.
Wow.
So, yeah. And that was a much I don't know. Harder is a weird way to describe it, but when you're 12, the relationship that you have with someone who passes is different.
Right.
And even though I was still a kid when my mom had her accident, I was a little bit more of a thinking human being.
Mm-hmm.
And I was making choices that emotionally impacted her in a conscious way. So that was a relationship that I definitely feel like I could have done more for. And I'm trying to, kind of forgive myself for the things that I regret not doing or doing. Um, but yeah, and then it was just my grandmother and me as a weird buddy cop duo after that.
That sounds like a movie.
Not to make
I'm
it about
terrified.
entertainment.
No. Well, I'm terrified of writing things. I have the greatest respect for people who write things, and I think a theater education is wonderful, except for the part where it's made me too reverential of the playwright. So I'm afraid of writing things. I'm working to get past it, but I do think that is one of the stories that I kind of have to tell, is because my grandmother was a force of nature, and tough as nails. And so when I went back to school, I was home for about 2 weeks after my mom's accident, and then I came home pretty much every weekend, or pretty close to every weekend. But my grandmother was there every single day
Wow.
in the various care facilities, just being with her. And like that is an ugly world to be around. Of like traumatic brain injury is like there's still so little understanding of what it looks like, and there's it's just I don't know how anyone works in that field, like the nurses to show up every day, and there's not a whole lot of hope to be had.
Mm-hmm.
There's so little that's known about the field of traumatic brain injury that you walk in every day with a hope that is probably not going to be met. Like things could change, but the odds are really bad. And, it's not as clean cut as like a soap opera makes a coma look. It's not like someone's eyes are closed and then all of a sudden they're open. It's like ugly and messy, and someone's eyes can be open and they're not with you. Or they can have a physical response that sounds a lot like communication, but it's not. So my grandmother being there every day is just kind of mind-blowing, because I was not able to do that. I could spend days in full on occasion, but I kind of had to tap out after a couple hours whenever I would go.
That's a long time, a couple hours. And
Yeah.
you were young, and it was a long time that she was in the coma.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was that long. Wow.
Yeah. So that was, but the good thing in terms of like going forward in my life is that I always had my parents' blessing, in knowing that I wanted to act. And my dad, I'm sure, had a hunch. And then my mom obviously enabled everything about my going to a performing arts high school and going to USC. She knew that was something like I had a great freshman year. And so she knew about all of those things, and she knew that it was something that I wanted to do, and she knew I was going to end up in LA, and she wanted me to go to Stanford because she liked the campus more and she thought it was prettier and safer.
Classic Jewish mom.
Yeah. She's like, I'd rather visit you in Palo Alto. I'm like, I'm so sorry. But yeah, so I
mean, that's a lot what you experienced.
Yeah.
That's more than what most people go through.
I think it is.
In a lifetime.
And I don't wish it on anyone.
Right.
I think it has the perspective. I really don't wish it on anyone. I think people will learn it in their own time as they have to. But I do appreciate that it has kind of made me a resource to people. I like being helpful. I like being of use. I like being able to put my experience to use because it kind of helps justify it in my brain. I don't know where I sit sort of religiously. I want to believe there is a purpose for it, because it would be like pretty shitty if I was just like, yeah, life's totally random and this thing happens, and but
Right.
I think there's a lesson to it that I'm always learning. Yeah, so I'm trying to I try to move forward from it.
I mean, your attitude is mind-blowing. Of just like I've said before, you talk to you for 2 seconds and you just have this amazing, radiant, dynamic energy.
Thank you.
And so many people who haven't lost someone or haven't been through something difficult have
all this negative energy and just can't figure things out. And
Yeah.
then you look at you and what you've been through, and you have this like aura of spicy sass and amazingness around you. It's just incredible.
Thank you.
Do you know that you're incredible?
That's very sweet to hear, and I'm very bad at taking compliments, but I appreciate it, and I hear you. I think everybody has something, and I think that's one of the things that I always try to confront kind of head on whenever someone is like put in their place in response to learning that about me. I'm like, yeah, I've had this happen, but everyone has a thing. Like, I am very fortunate that I did not have any other major trauma when I was growing up. I'm still processing the grief and the loss and all of those feelings, but I had a really wonderful childhood and a very supported upbringing. And so I can't empathize with people who've had to deal with those kinds of things day in, day out. So everybody has something.
It's true. I think that, yes, absolutely true. But I do think that some people just haven't been through as difficult of something by this age. Some definitely have, some have not. And so, I don't know. I think it's interesting of not minimizing the enormity of what you did process, but also acknowledging other people's pain points.
Yeah.
I mean, what is it like for you when people find out that you lost both of your parents and ask questions that are perhaps inappropriate or obscure? What is that experience like for you?
I don't often find any questions inappropriate.
Okay, love that you said that.
Yeah, because I would much rather people ask and have it be a source of open communication and a chance for I'm very much aboard the radical vulnerability train. Like, I think if you want to make a lasting connection to a person, you have to open yourself up to those things. And it is weirdly not that vulnerable for me at this point to talk about. I think I'm far enough away. I've been in a state of grief and grieving for long enough that it doesn't feel that hard to talk about. Like, the emotion is still there. It still gets triggered or activated. But yeah, I would much rather people ask. I wasn't always that way. When my mom was in her coma and I was back in school.
You were what, 20?
I was 19.
19.
And I was in class. I think I didn't want to acknowledge how much it was affecting me. And I also I had a weird relationship with it because on the one hand, I just really didn't want to be looked at differently.
Right.
I didn't want to be seen as less than or less capable because of this thing that happened. So there were times where I just I couldn't focus enough to do a project, and I would have to open up to a professor about I didn't get this done. But I think something had been internally communicated because the school found out.
Right.
And so something had been disseminated to the people that needed to know that hey, he's dealing with this, so he either will or won't talk about it. But know that this is going on separately. And I think there was a lot of kindness extended in response to that. But I had a really hard time saying that, I still felt and feel just as capable despite what has happened. And it's important for me to be perceived that way. So I think that's part of why I don't necessarily offer it. I wouldn't know how to be by the way, I don't have parents. But it doesn't I don't want to be, I don't know what people think when they hear that information. And I don't want to be a victim of their expectation.
I love that you said that. It's beautifully put, I would say. Because even as someone who, you're comfortable talking about this, I'm comfortable talking about this. But when I hear both parents, even for me as someone who interviews and talks to a grief counselor and this podcast, I've only met, a small handful of people that have lost both. So it is unique to you and your situation. And it's incredible the energy you have around you in your, or I know I keep saying that, but it just is. It's
Thank
just
you.
amazing. I
Thanks.
just want to compliment you.
I appreciate that.
What do you-
I wouldn't know. I think that's maybe another thing is that I don't know how else to
Right.
do it.
Right.
So like I very
Drugs.
much hear and appreciate your compliment. Oh yeah, I could. But like I've never been like I'm bad at drugs. Just
No,
like generally I'm not good at.
No, that was a dumb thing for me.
Yeah,
to say.
no,
I'm
but
saying,
totally
like,
people
you're
do
amazing.
and whatever
Yeah.
people, but I don't know if I was necessarily guided down the path of responding to it the way that I have been. It's just kind of been the only way that I've known how. So I hear and appreciate the way I'm seen for it,
Mm-hmm.
but I wouldn't necessarily know how to do it any other way.
What advice would you have for someone who just lost both of their parents?
That's both of their parents. Well, I think in general,
Or one?
I think just in any loss is to take the time that you need, and it's okay to ask for help, whatever that looks like for you. Yeah, I think it's really important to feel whatever it is you need to feel. I was denied a little bit of that when my mom had her accident because my grandmother was not she was a wonderful person, but she was not terribly emotionally available.
Mm-hmm.
She left space for my emotions, maybe because I carved them out. Like I carved it out. Like I was like, I have feelings, and you're gonna hear about them. But I was told basically before I got on the plane home, right after the accident, that you're the head of this household now.
Wow.
And so that it kind of put me in a weird mind. And it was, I mean, to an extent, it was true. I had a lot of logistics that I needed to do
Mm-hmm.
that she was not capable of doing. So they would just not have gotten done. But yeah, I think it's really important to feel that there's no wrong way to feel, and that a lot of people can everyone's going through the loss of a person that has met that person. So people have their own interpretation of what that experience is like, and it's totally valid, but their experience is not your experience, and that's okay too.
I love that. Is there a book or a podcast or a film that you found relief in some way?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, it remains the best piece of theater I've ever seen. So when I was 13, Billy Crystal took 700 Sundays, which is his one-man show, on tour. He did it on Broadway. He won the Special Tony for it, and then he toured it. And it was, as I was 13, it was a little bit after my dad had passed. I went with my mom, and the premise of the show, it's just Billy Crystal on stage for 3 hours, which, like, he's already a performing icon to me, and a lot of what he has done in his career, I dream of doing in mine. But the premise of the show is that his dad had a heart attack and passed away when he was, I want to say, when he was 13.
Wow.
And his dad worked his ass off, but every Sunday was reserved for the family. And so he calculated out that he had 700 Sundays with his dad before he passed.
Oh.
And it was the first time that I had ever seen grief portrayed the way I felt it. And I get goosebumps thinking about it. It's like when you feel heard for the first time, that's a really, really special thing. And I've listened to other books on grief and read people's writings on grief, and most of the time it's just a huge bummer. Like
Right. Right.
it's totally whatever people need for themselves. Like some
Yeah.
people need to sit in those feelings. But yeah, for him it was, and he throws back to his childhood. It's a whole, I mean, it's a full biography, but he really covers that period of time beautifully. And so he did it when I was 13, and I hadn't seen a whole lot of theater then in my life. I didn't like have a developed palate necessarily. And then he brought it back. He did it as an HBO special.
Oh, so people can see this?
Yeah, they can see it. It's on HBO. I think it's still on like HBO Now streaming, and you can buy it on DVD. And he made it into a book too. So you can buy it in all of its forms, and I highly recommend it. But he brought it back.
Awesome.
And when I think it was right after I got out of college, he did it again on Broadway for HBO. and then I had lost my mom.
Wow.
And so I went, now having like been through a theater education, having studied abroad, having, you know, what I thought was, I'm still learning my theatrical taste, but I had more of a palate for it. And I was like, I don't know if this is going to hold up, but it had a really important role to me. So I went in a blizzard to New York, almost for the express purpose of seeing this show.
Oh, the imagery, the agony.
Yeah, sat in the very last row of the balcony.
Of course.
And went with a friend who I had studied abroad with and just bawled my eyes out. I mean, it was everything. It still was every bit as resonant and important. And he covered, I don't know if the first time I saw it, he had lost his mom. But he had lost his mom by the time the second production rolled around.
Right.
So he covers that too. And that he lost her as an adult. Like, she lived a very long, wonderful life, and he had a lot of time with her. But yeah, and so after the show, like he pre-signed all of his merch, which I thought was amazing as an idea, because it's just him alone on stage for 3 hours. And like, he's exhausted. He's given all of himself in these 3 hours, so he doesn't want to wait and sign autographs for nerds after the show. He wants to like go home. And but I was like, no, you won't. So I waited at the stage door for him, and he's like, I mean, he's worn out, understandably, and he's like, signing for people, and he's like tired, and he doesn't look particularly like happy. It's a blizzard in New York. And I call out from where I'm standing. Like, I just sort of launch into my story. I'm like, I saw the show for the first time when I was 13, and I had just lost my dad, and it helped me so much. And I recently lost my mom, and I needed to see again. And I just want to thank you for everything that you've given me. Like, just kind of one,
just
like,
a casual
like,
little statement.
Launched it and like lasered into his ear, and he looked up, and it like he had not been looking in anyone's eyes, and he looked up, and he goes, he's like, "How you doing? You okay?" And I was like, yeah. Like, and I had that like moment with him where I was able to kind of share what he'd given, because I don't get starstruck necessarily, because my whole hope is that like I'm going to be working with these people.
Right.
But like
You
the
are
ones
the
who made
star.
an impact on you artistically and emotionally, I think it's really important to find a way. And I fortunately found eloquence. I've had plenty of like fall on my face moments with people that I respect. But that one I like was able to say what I needed to say to him. And so that was so I highly recommend 700 Sundays by Billy Crystal in all of its forms.
That's beautiful. Tiny question with I usually ask at the beginning. Goldfish moment. When was the first time you conceptualized or thought about death? For a lot of people, it was their goldfish.
Goldfish moment. Did your goldfish die? Goldfish moment. Did it make you cry?
Yeah. Did you do John D'Appolito? Is that how you?
No.
Oh, he has he's a.
Is this already a podcast?
No,
Is this already
no.
Okay.
He's an acting coach, but he also does a thing where he essentially like helps you tap into your niche as a performer, the thing that you do best, and it revolves around the idea of your goldfish moment that happened like sometime between the ages of like 10 and 14, where you had a moment where you never saw the world the same way again.
Wait, I'm really upset. He does not call it a goldfish moment.
It's a fishbowl moment, something like it's somewhat.
What is the exact term?
I don't recall. I'm sorry.
Every podcast episode has it. I have a special engineer that I hired to make a music jingle called Goldfish Moment.
No. Well, then cut this out.
High five to him. No, because
I don't think it was the gold. I think it's like a fishbowl moment.
Okay,
where you realize that you're in a fishbowl. Or the fishbowl shatters. I don't quite remember the metaphor.
Mine's not about,
yours is more eloquent, I'm sure.
Mine's not about the fishbowl shattering. Mine's about like when you realize your goldfish didn't actually run away. It died.
That type of, that's definitely not what he means.
Okay, different.
If that helps.
We're okay. Okay, great.
How funny.
I know you have to go soon, but it's just a quick version. Like, when's the first time you thought about death?
The first time that I thought about death, I don't know if I had contemplated it prior to my dad passing. I remember a moment in so he had a stroke in our house in the middle of the night, and then like the paramedics came when my mom found him, and I remember standing in my driveway And one of the paramedics, as like a means, I think, of comforting me, gave me the strip of paper that had his heart rate on it, because it was like almost like a receipt. Like it was that kind of paper and that like a thin
Whoa.
strip. And it was like, see, he's alive. It was like here's proof. Like he's alive still now.
Wow.
And I, like thinking back, I'm like, what a kind of mean thing to do. Like I appreciate where it comes from, but it's a little bit like, I get where you're going, but we don't know what's going to happen. And then clearly, like that was the last time, really. I mean, I saw him while he was in the hospital, but he like passed essentially from the complications of the stroke. So,
You were very young.
yeah, I was 11. And I remember sitting, it was all very surreal. We sat, like they pull you off to the rooms that are essentially reserved for bad news at the hospital. And, I remember my mom saying, like, I lost my best friend, like said that phrase. And I was like, how? At the time, I didn't have any, like really I didn't have an appreciation for it at all. I didn't have like a sympathy for it, because I was like, how do you muster those words now? But like that was her way of processing. Like she needed to be heard. But yeah, I think that was sort of my first encounter with death, was like when it happened. My grandfather had passed away, but I don't remember thinking about death actively until kind of forced to.
Childhood is so beautiful in that way. You just don't think about the
Yeah.
things that, can be harmful.
Yeah. And I had seen a lot of theater where people died even at that point, and you just kind of don't, watch shows and characters die, and I was like, yeah, okay.
Right. Well, and even like Disney movies, a lot of the princesses, parents die or leave, but that's not the theme of the story. So
Yeah.
I don't think it's till more recently in the media that they're portraying actual feelings of grief and the
Yeah.
process as
Yeah.
opposed to the concept. And that's partially, I think, to protect young minds. So it has to be done mindfully and be age appropriate.
Yeah.
But there's still ways to address it, I think, that can be more open than what has been shown.
Totally. And yeah, I think Garden State was one of the first things that like also did that really well for like the masses. I still think 700 Cities is like the best. But Garden State also like addresses it kind of head on, what that experience could look like. You haven't seen Garden State?
Lord, I
Give her the
have to see it.
soundtrack
Okay.
alone.
Okay, gotta do it.
But right?
Got to do a lot of
Yeah.
things. Well, Mark, you're amazing. I could talk to you for 4 hours.
Ditto.
So I just want to say, again, you radiate such positivity and light. You are extremely inspirational. I'm very thrilled for you. And I'm excited about your professional successes and your personal ones because you're married. Holla. Where can
Thank
people
you.
find you on social media if they'd like to connect?
I am at Sir Mark of J, Mark with a K. I started an improv troupe in college, and we were Sir first name of last name because we were USC's all British improv troupe. So that was what we called ourselves.
They
So
were
it's
hilarious, by
Sir
the
Mark
way.
of J.
Great. And that's on
Instagram, on the Twitter. Yeah.
Cool. And I'll check in with you before it comes out to see what other fancy things are happening.
Hopefully more.
You're amazing. If only we could all be as amazing as Mr. Mark
Oh,
of J.
jeez. I paid her really well to say that, you guys.
Okay. LOL. Thanks, Mark. Have a cute one.
Thank you.
Bye. Bloopers, 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 bloopers. Oh, great.
Oh,
okay,
good.
let us know
That's
when
fine.
you're recording. Are we recording? Now we're recording. None of that mattered. Well, thank you so much for coming.